Sure. So I am an author, a psychic, and I call myself a cosmic life coach. I basically sort of have dedicated my life to empowering people to follow their own intuition. So whether it's through private sessions or workshops, teaching people about meditation or blogs or books that I write, it's all about teaching people to understand that the most powerful and accurate intuition they're ever going to receive comes from themselves.
Okay, amazing, right? And I know that you have an upcoming book, but before we talk about that, right, I suppose the book before this, that you already knew that is really what sort of your work encapsulates. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, so my first book was called But You Knew That Already, and it's a memoir. It's sort of my journey of becoming a professional psychic, because this was never my intention. I had had psychic experiences from a very, very young age, but having it be my job sort of came out of nowhere. And this was not, I read a lot of other spiritual books that people would have these profoundly deep spiritual experiences, and mine was sort of like a comedy of errors, like all the mistakes that I've made, and I was obsessed with being psychic for a period of time. So it's all of the mistakes that I made and how I learned to differentiate what it means to be a spiritual person from an intuitive person, because they're pretty different. And so it's my spiritual journey so that people can understand that, I don't receive information about my life 100% accurately. I make mistakes. I still choose to ignore my intuition. And it was kind of a fun book of how I found my center and learned how to really understand how to utilize intuition.
Amazing. And I know that your upcoming book is being released in a couple of weeks. It will probably, this interview will probably go out as it's released. So
fun.
Your Life in Color, tell me about it.
Okay, so basically the way my ability manifests is that when I hear the sound of someone's voice, I start to see colors around them. And this has been ever since I was a young child. My parents used to say that when I was standing in the crib, I would talk about hearing color and seeing color and hearing voices. And my dad thought that I was crazy and sent me to a doctor. My mom thought it was like super cool and, bought all these books on being psychic. But in the beginning, it was just seeing an aura. I would see energy around someone and I'd say, I see blue around you, and then sort of send them on their merry way. But over the past 20 years, I started gathering data of certain personality traits repeating over and over again with color. Like, why is it every time I see gold around someone, chances are they're self-employed or their intention is to be self-employed. If I see orange around someone, they're a counselor or some kind of a life coach. So I started to notice these sort of archetypes and energy personalities behind the colors. And then more importantly, I started to first personally practice with using color to invoke certain aspects of my being, and then sort of prescribing them to clients that, if you aren't terribly independent, you can use gold to encourage yourself to be more independent. Or if you felt like you needed more honesty in a conversation, just the act of wearing blue or visualizing blue will stimulate the room to bring up more honesty. So the whole point of Your Life in Color is exploring the historical references to color. It looks at spiritual references, what I've learned from observing auras after all of these years, and then how you can use color to sort of change your life.
Amazing, right? And so for a reader who's interested in finding out about how they can sort of tap into that, what would you suggest? Because obviously buying your book and reading it, which obviously we recommend.
Yeah. Well, first of all, color is playful. Every person on the planet, every language, every society, everybody asks the question, what's your favorite color? The moment you're born, you are assigned a color based on your gender. It's like the first thing that happens. So it's constantly influencing our life. So what I tell people that are listening to like this interview is play with color, see how it makes you feel. I used to live in New York City, and when I lived in a big city, I would wear darker colors. I'd wear black, I'd wear gray, I'd wear brown. And I think the reason for that is space is limited, so I was pulling my energy in. I wanted to ground my energy with earth tones. Then I moved to Los Angeles, and suddenly it was like, well, I can wear orange, I can try red. So first, see how color makes you feel. Like every store that you go into, they have researched the colors that you were looking at to get you to spend more money, to feel a certain emotion. So we want to look at our reaction to colors, from the colors that we love and even the colors that we're repelled by. It means something about who we are and where we are in our life.
Okay. And so this is so amazing. Is it overwhelming for you to walk into a mall or a space that's very busy? Do you pick up on everything, or have you kind of managed to manage that?
So I used to use my intuition as an excuse for being a hermit or a shut-in. I would say I'm way too psychic to go to the mall, or I'm too emotionally connected to be in an airport. And I still have moments when I'm out in public where it does feel like this sort of barrage of energy and of emotion and of color and of movement. But I've learned to look at it from a different perspective. When I'm observing the energy of other people, I'm just observing the energy. It's not my job to take it on. It's not my job to transform it. So now when I go to a mall or something, I have to remind myself, I'm just observing the energy. I don't have to be a sponge. And I think a lot of intuitive, sensitive people, well, I should speak for myself. Sometimes I felt like it was my responsibility to uplift the energy in a public environment, and it's not. I can use color as a way to ground myself, to connect back with myself, and then just observe this like extraordinary world that we live in instead of hiding in my house, which is what I used to do, and that wasn't getting me anywhere.
Yeah, I can imagine, right? It's that sort of overload that you're trying to protect yourself from, but at the end of the day, you've got to go out.
You have to live. Well, and that's what I used to do, is I used to only protect myself from energy, but I had no friends. I wasn't in a relationship, and all I did was give readings. So when I gave myself permission to observe energy in my walking life, then I started dating and business got better and I had friendships. I was healthier rather than being a sponge, just being someone that observes energy.
And I think that's such an important message for anyone who is sensitive, and whether that's, you know, emotionally sensitive or if you're psychically sensitive, that you've got to be able to take care of yourself. And I think that, I know for myself, that I often don't realize, I mean, part of what's happened for me is learning to recognize when I'm feeling overwhelmed.
Exactly.
So for me, for a very long time, I couldn't recognize it. I didn't understand it. And only sort of when I really became conscious of what that overwhelm feels like for me in my body, then I now know, like, okay, well, that's too much for me, it's freaking me out, or I just need to step back, or whatever it is. It's actually most of the times just become grounded again. But
exactly, yeah.
You know,
and for me, that overwhelming feeling, usually I would blame on the environment that I was in. But the truth is, it usually came back to how I created and started my day. Did I eat well? Did I meditate? Did I take care of myself? Because if I'm being distracted by the energy of others, it's really not about them. It's about what's going on with my energy management. And sometimes at a party, like I say I have to go to the bathroom, I'm not really going to the bathroom. I'm going to like take a deep breath, connect with my energy, go back into the room and ground myself, just like you said.
Amazing, right? When you see a couple sort of sitting together, do you see colors interacting with each other? Is that what
Absolutely.
It's like? Really?
Yeah. It's actually pretty lovely. It's funny, like you can tell so much about what's going on in a room based on the aura, because people can be smiling and, you know, projecting this like physical, everything's great, but the energy gets really close to their body. So yeah, when we're connecting, it's really beautiful. The energies will mix together and they'll get brighter and they'll connect. And based on the topic, you know, like if you're sharing information or if I'm watching a performance, to see the energy come from the artist into the audience is like so spectacular. And then the way that we absorb it, you know, even in dating, you get that feeling when you're talking to someone like you're bonding and you're connecting, right? You can feel the exchange of energy. Well, that's happening on the soul plane as well. The colors will merge, they'll spark. It's really, really quite extraordinary.
So beautiful. So for anyone who wants to cultivate that, because, I mean, I'm not sure where you stand on this, but I believe that everyone can cultivate these abilities, and I'm almost 100 or like 80% sure that I've read something on your website that says the same thing. So if
Correct,
someone
yeah.
wants to cultivate their intuitive abilities or the ability to see colors and auras, how would you recommend they go about that?
So it's the most boring answer in the world, but it's meditation.
Okay.
I mean, like I'd love to tell you like it's one crystal, or it's like one yoga pose that will get you there, but it really is meditation. So I believe that the brain is what's keeping us functioning all day long. The brain made sure that I was here for this interview on time. The brain reminds me to go grocery shopping, to pay the mortgage, to do all those things to balance our life. The brain will stop us from having a spiritual experience, though. So when I meditate, when I invoke color and energy in my life, what I'm asking the brain to do is focus on this one color, on this one vibration, on this one energy. And then after that, the result will be some kind of spiritual experience. The more I meditate, the more energy I see in my life. If I'm not connecting and clearing my brain and clearing my consciousness, my intuition is very muddied. I don't see energy in the same way. So it's really about meditation. Now, the problem for me is that I don't naturally gravitate towards meditation. I can think of 9,000 other things to do. So I have to make it fun and playful. I'm not going to stand on my head for 45 minutes. That won't work for me. Meditation has to be fun and playful and something easy I can incorporate into my day. And there's so many, there's literally thousands of forms out there, obviously. So any form of meditation that really resonates for you. But I find when we meditate, that's when we start to see energy. And what's funny is that I do these workshops. I call them like how to see the human aura. And so that's like I call that's the sugar. That's what people are coming for, is that they want to see the aura. What are they learning? They're just learning how to meditate, and then they see an aura by the end of the day.
But by the end of it, they all pieced out anyway, so it's fine.
Exactly, right. But if I did a workshop of learn how to meditate, not as many people would show up.
So is there any color or a way that you see it if someone's ill? How do you see that energetic pattern?
It's more the vibrancy of the color. So there's one color that every living thing has. And if I'm teaching people how to see energy, it's the first thing that we're looking for. And it's kind of a hard color to describe until someone has seen it. I'm thinking you've seen it before. It's like this soft, white, almost yellow kind of vibration. And it's literally life force. It literally means you're alive. So when I'm tuning into someone, that's usually the first layer that I'll see. How bright it is, not how strong, like almost how tangible I can feel it when I'm seeing it. That talks about life force, how healthy they are. If it starts to diminish, if it's not very strong, that could be anything from a cold to disease or something in the body. The other thing is, if a color is opaque, if I can't see through it, the energy isn't moving, and that can turn into an illness. So I think someday with technology and with people being able to see energy, we will start to see the emotional root or block first in the aura before it manifests in the body. So usually what I'm doing is trying to find the emotional root, get the person to open up about it, laugh about it, most importantly, to get the energy to move so that it doesn't become something physical.
And how incredible the ability to see that and be able to change it, right? And we can. That's the thing. We really, really can see it. And it sort of comes back to, we gave the example of anxiety and being overwhelmed. We are responsible. I mean, some people obviously suffer from more anxiety than, some human beings. So it can be an energy for people, but we are responsible for our energy management. And it's so about tuning into, through meditation, being able to scan your own aura and see, am I balanced right now? Am I clear? And if I'm not, how could I approach this topic, situation, or even just my day differently so that I can be clear and as healthy as possible? Amazing. And it's so empowering. I mean, it's empowering hearing you talk about it.
Thank you. Well, I mean, I think energy should be fun. I mean, I recognize that I can meditate for 15 minutes during the day and feel so spiritual and so connected in a controlled environment. But then I get in the car and I drive to the grocery store, and people in the Whole Foods parking lot, I mean, we act like we're spiritual beings, but not in the parking lot, we're knocking into each other, you know, and I'm thrown from my spiritual center, but I can look down at my clothing and the color can invoke something. You know, like we all have lives. Maybe you're a mom or a dad, you've got kids, you're a school teacher, you're a lawyer, you've got things going on. So if we project this seriousness that you have to sit in the lotus position for total silence for 45 minutes, it feels unattainable. But you have time to take a deep breath, visualize a color, wear it during the day to remind you that you're a spiritual being at your core. That can be playful, easy, and fun.
And immediate. And I love
and immediate,
that, right?
exactly.
Yeah. And I think that's so helpful. You said earlier that some colors, if people are repelled by some colors, it also tells you something. Will you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'll give an example from my life. So there's one color, amethyst. It's considered the color of the peaceful warrior. The shadow side of it, though, is that there's a problem of communication. And when I first started working with amethyst, I couldn't see it. I didn't like it. People would, you know, and as a psychic, people are always bringing me amethyst, like, oh, you should like this stone. I didn't like it. I was repelled by it. When I started to explore the shadow side, it ended up being rooted in the fact that I'm a sexual abuse survivor, and I hadn't been communicating about it. I didn't feel peace. I didn't feel like I was being protected. And so I was repelled by that color because I didn't want to go into those feelings. After years of therapy, journal writing, confronting my abuser, I actually have been able to really connect with that color and understand it. So oftentimes a color that we don't like means something for ourselves. Mint green. I see mint green around, sometimes it'll be a pregnant woman, it will be someone that might teach exercise classes, it's the body, it's wellness. I could teach workshops on how to hang out on a couch for hours. Exercise does not come naturally to me, but I use mint green because I want to be in my body. I used to be very overweight, so it reminds me to eat well, to be grounded, to be balanced. It's not my favorite color, but I've learned a lot from it.
It's amazing that, right? That it's almost like a little flag that needs to be listened to in a way, and instead of being afraid of it, to kind of step into it and see what it can teach you. And I really love the idea of having the sort of it's that, if I've understood it correctly, that archetypal imaging of it, right? So you've got the light attribute and the shadow part of it. And it's really funny that you, I mean, not funny, I'm sitting in a room, we're busy traveling at the moment, and the room, the color I'm facing at the moment is like a light purple, and I usually like purple, but this room really bugs me.
Isn't that funny?
I actually thought, I wonder if I should sit in here because maybe I'll be irritated looking at this color or something. But
what's funny about that is that, so I have notes and I had written down purple when you were talking, but purple didn't feel like, it felt like right now, not necessarily you all the time. Like you feel more green to me at your core than purple. So that's interesting that you're in a room and you're not that drawn to it. But it's a good color. So purple can also represent leadership. And you've got a lot of things coming up in the next year where you're going to be stepping into the leadership role, which is comfortable for you, but also seems to make you like a little bit nervous. And what I love about your leadership style is you don't lead from ego. Like you want to lead a team and everybody to be seen as equals. So it's an interesting color for you to play with. But I think at your core, you're more green, which is communication, creativity. So purple would be interesting for you to sort of practice with.
Well, I'm getting my practice, let me tell you.
Forced into it.
I'm falling asleep, I'm thinking, okay, just be calm. It's
so
interesting,
funny, like,
thank you for sharing that with me.
Yeah, and how that can affect the room. And that's a great thing to play with. Is I love accent walls in my house because we'll change the color. We even have this light bulb that you can like change an app of all the colors so you can set the mood just to see how it makes you feel.
Amazing, right? So thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to me. Is there anything you want to leave our audience with in particular?
So if there's one thing when it comes to working with color and energy is that it's fun. There's nothing to be afraid of. Energy is something that uplifts and supports us and makes us observe our life from a completely different perspective. So I would encourage everyone to play with color, visualize it, try it in your home with decorating the clothes that you wear, see how it makes you feel, and utilize colors that make you feel your best.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to me. It was great fun.
Pleasure. It was super fun as well. Enjoy that purple room.
Thanks.